some tips about fielding requests, like, you know, kind of across the board. Like, if you don't know the person, don't respond. If you do, but if they seem like, you go to their profile and they seem like they're on the up and like they might be useful, do. And if you do that, then how do you follow up? Blah 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 blah. So let's talk about connections. You guys got some good tips and pointers about connections.
Mine's really easy. I accept connections from pretty much everyone, except there's only 2 connections I haven't ever accepted from an individual, and I think 6 connections that I haven't accepted from corporations, because I don't believe that corporations should be asking to connect with me. I want to know there's someone behind it. But otherwise, I pretty much accept anyone that wants to make a request to me on LinkedIn. For me, that's what it's for. It's fine. I'm more than welcome.
I have a question actually for you, and that is, how many of you have written a recommendation for somebody else? How many of you have done that in the last month? How many of you have asked people to write a recommendation about you?
One.
All right. I think a big thing about your connections is to honor them and nurture them. They're like plants. Mm-hmm. So write recommendations about people, even if they didn't ask you to. If you really did have an honest, good organic reason to do it, do it. It's a wonderful thing when you...
What if you have too many recommendations?
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, I was going to say, is there such a thing? I mean, you can also manage your recommendations too. You don't have to show them all. But, yes?
What if you're requesting to write a recommendation for someone that you don't necessarily care to recommend?
The question was, what if you get requested to write a recommendation from somebody you don't want to recommend? Well, then you can respond to them privately and explain to them that right now you don't feel like writing that recommendation, or it depends on your level of honesty and what you want to do with that. But going back to the point of connections, I mean, yeah, I agree. There's definitely, you want to accept connections, you want to meet new people, you want to expand that network, and there's some other good reasons to do that reach beyond just wanting to meet people. But when you write those recommendations and when you give those recommendations, you're building up what's called social proof. And social proof is the way that people can vet you to say, all right, great, you've got a great resume, it's being displayed very nicely on your LinkedIn profile, but can you do what you say that you do? And that's a great way to get some proof in there, is to have other people write about you. So look at it this way, it's not about necessarily just asking people to write recommendations about you, because it's a little obligatory there, but what you may want to do is go and give to receive, pay it forward. If you start writing a recommendation, it makes people feel like, you know what, I should write a recommendation back. And it's a lot more honest and genuine.
Do you pay attention to it? If someone has more than 3 recommendations on LinkedIn, their profile's completely matters to you, do you go through and look at it?
I think it depends on...
Could you repeat that question? Even I didn't hear it.
Sorry.
I was asking David how much it matters to him as to whether or not, if someone has more than 3 recommendations, he actually is going through and looking at those recommendations in the profile. Because for me, it doesn't. So that's why I'm curious.
I think it depends on the application. If you're, and David, I'll let you speak to this, I'm sure in the field of recruiting, and for those of you that are looking for work, which is everybody in the room, yes. If you're doing it from what I normally use LinkedIn for these days, which is a lot of research and discovery and working with other businesses, it's something that I skim through, but it's a great way to find where you have connections to those people. Sometimes I've found that somebody that I barely know has been recommended by somebody I really respect. And now I want to really get to know them. So, I'm not discarding somebody, I'm actually saying, oh wow, there's a connection there and I can leverage it this way or that way. So I don't want to take up the time. So
no, I think there's a credibility factor. If you're recommended by somebody who I come along and I know that person as well and I have a respect for that person, they've recommended you, then that is really a first level screen for me as a recruiter. So the way I approach it is, there's a thin line between a referral and a recommendation. It's subjective. Clearly people have opinions, and you hope that if they don't have anything nice to say, they won't. But ultimately, for me as a recruiter, I'm on the hunt for information. So for me, I love looking at recommendations because the people that referred you could potentially be a candidate for me. So I'm absolutely out there. I think that's actually a really important point here is I get such a kick out of people that, excuse me, they join LinkedIn and they invite their friends to connect and they don't connect with anybody else. And I don't understand that. It's a networking site. If you're not there to network, then don't go on the site. I mean, feel free to disagree, but for me, if you're there to network, you put yourself out there. You don't have to put your personal information into your profile. And And I think that's an important piece because people can communicate through the system without you having to risk an identity theft or something of that nature. The other thing is as it relates to recommendations, is the people within the groups that you should be joining. I think, is it 50?
Yeah.
You could join 50 groups at no charge. I think that's the limit they let you, and you should join absolutely 50 groups, because people that you're not connected to directly, but people that are in the same group you can communicate with. So it's absolutely a great tool to be able to go into that group and to click on the members and start looking at the members. Those are people that have a common interest, and there's a common ground. They're more receptive to networking, to answering questions, answering polls, that kind of thing. So there's a pool of people that are out there that want to network with you, and I think the big thing is the engagement aspect. Is it is a tool to share information. If you're just going to put your information out there and say, okay, now what? I'm not going to devote any more time to this, then you've got unrealistic expectations. I was jotting a few notes before I came in here, and my goals with LinkedIn are a little bit more tactical. Tactical in that I want to introduce, and I tell candidates, introduce yourself to whatever that number is, 5 new people a week, or join 2 new groups this week, or leave a comment on 5 new poll questions or something of that nature. Because to me, that's not a direct request, but it's more like you're putting yourself out there, you're trying to benefit what that person's trying to do, gather that information. So I would say that those are a couple of things that you can do with regard to recommendations of people in groups and how to best use your time with those folks.